basically, there's a lot of information in here. And if you're looking to scroll through a list, there's going to be a few. Some of those fields might have a few thousand selections. And so instead of scrolling, we can narrow that number down, or we can order it in a way that makes sense to us. So when we do a search by right-clicking on a field, it will return all the pre-populated selections specific to that field. If we do a filter search, it will return all possible selections that start with the string of characters that are already in the field. If we do a filter function from the search window, that allows us to return a number of rows that meet the criteria that we set. If we do a sort, that will organize our list. So that will organize our list in whatever order our criteria is set up to be. And each one of these filters and sorts can be set to save or defaulted for future use. Defaults alter the search window on all future searches of that field that it's set to. And save sorts and filters can be selected on future sessions, but it's not automatically set that way. One thing of note is if you set up a default filter for a field and you forget that you set up a default filter, that may hide a certain selection that you desire. And so we'll go over how to know if there's a default filter set up or a default sort set up and be able to change that, alter that, or delete it. So let's take a look in SiteManager so you can see how this actually works. So what I have here is just a basic sample record that I created earlier. And we can see we have a number of fields that allow for the option of search and filter search. So if we look at something like material, we can search that, and what we see is that I have a bunch of selections here that all meet a criteria of electrical. And so what I can do to default it back to all possible rows. This is what you would typically see if you did a search on your material. And as we scroll through here, there's about 400 options for material. And if we want to set up a filter for this field, we can click the filter button. And this brings up our filter criteria. In here, we have a number of options where we can insert a criteria or add a row. And from here, we can select what things we want to search for, which field we want to search for, what condition, what value. We can use the Add button to add an additional criteria, or we can remove a criteria with the Remove button. So we'll do one real quick here. We'll do a filter on the category. And we'll say the category is, or the field is material category. The condition is equal to, and the value will be electrical. So if I click OK here, that'll show that it's going to return 71 rows or 71 selections. And then the only returned things are electrical material codes. So if I go back into my filter, I can add an additional filter. And from here, I can search another field, such as material code, or I can expand my search by searching material category again, and with the join of and, I can search for something like concrete. No. With a join of or, I can search for both electrical and asphalt. And that will return all materials that meet that category. So let's take a look at, so I can add some searches, and I can remove criteria with the remove button. I can clear criteria, any and all criteria with the clear button. If I do test, I can see how many rows or selections will possibly be returned. If I choose the load button, it'll show any and all saved filters for that field. And if I choose the save button, it'll save my filter for future use. The other option that I have when doing a search is I can choose to sort my results with this option here. Now I have a default sort set up to sort by material category and then by material name. And when you click on the field, you can choose different things. So if I choose by material code as my first choice and click OK, what I'll see is that it'll be an order of alphabetical order of material codes. So this might be something that's useful, say, for samplers, that if you want to sort, you can sort by inspector name, or you can sort by geographical area. So if all your samplers are in District 1, you'd be able to easily group them and look through them. So when I click the load button, I can see that I have my default sort saved in here. And if I'd like to remove that default sort, I can delete it. up here and click the default checkbox, and then click OK. And now, any future uses of SiteManager, or any future times that I do a search on this field, it'll sort by that criteria. Now, we also have an option for find, which what that will do is if you set criteria in here, it will find the first row that meets that criteria. This isn't a function I typically use. I prefer either using the filters or the sorts, just because it doesn't narrow down the number of things I have to look at or organize them. Now, if you were to set a default, particularly of note is default filters. That may be an issue if you try and find a specific thing in the future. Let's say I was looking for something that was not electrical, but I had a material category filter of electrical. Then I wouldn't be able to see anything that doesn't fit that category in the future. So a quick way to check and see if I have a default filter set is when I do a right-click on the header here, I can select the Show Filter / Sort, and I can see that I have a default filter set. And I can remove that default filter by going into the filter and loading it, and then deleting it. Remove this one too. There we go. There's all of the possible selections for material code. So, Ryan, could you unmute everyone? And if there's any questions, we can address those now. Does anybody have any questions on how to set a filter or sort? One thing I will say is that these filters and these sorts are specific to the fields that you apply them to. So if I'm looking in producer supplier here, it brings up only producer suppliers, but the filters that I apply are specific just for that field. And there are multiple areas in here that you can always check and see if a field can have a sort or filter applied by right-clicking on it. And if it brings up the search feature or the search window, then you can apply a filter. And also, you can use these functions within windows that are not just under your basic sample data. It can be used on any window. All right, if there are no questions, we can close this for the day, and thank you all for coming. Hope this was helpful. We'll have the recording if you have any questions or you'd like to review this. We'll have that available on the website.